It seems like the Middle East is descending into a world war. Israel is attacking Gaza and Syria. Syria is attacking Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran is threatening the USA and Israel, and the most shocking of them all, Houthis have officially declared war on the United States. But you see, Houthis are not very strong, so maybe they need to listen to our military before they pick a fight they cannot win. Here's the message.
They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We've seen war. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
So a lot of wars going on in the Middle East. Let's go through them one by one, starting with the Israel-Hamas war, which just restarted. As many of you guys may already know, there was a pause in fighting, there was a ceasefire that was agreed, and it's supposed to be a 4-step ceasefire to a permanent peace. That was the hope, at least. In phase 1, there was an exchange of some hostages and some Palestinian prisoners, and ceasefire in phase 1 lasted about 2 months. In the meantime, both parties were supposed to negotiate a phase 2 implementation, basically work out the details while the ceasefire was still ongoing. Unfortunately, there was not a deal signed and there was no phase 2, so now the war has restarted again. Here we have the special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, sharing the details as to what went wrong and why the war restarted.
The Hamas proposal is a non-starter, Jake. I spent, along with Senior Policy Director Eric Traeger from Mike Waltz's office, I spent close to 7.5 hours at the Arab Summit. We had really positive conversation there. I would describe it as game-changing, but for Hamas's response. So we spent a good deal of time talking about a bridge proposal that would see the release of 5 live hostages that included Idan Alexander, and also, by the way, see the release of a substantial amount of Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails, which would be a wonderful thing for these Palestinian families. And I thought the proposal was compelling. The Israelis were informed about it and advised about it beforehand. And after waiting for 2 or 3 days from Hamas, which is their usual mode, we got an unacceptable response. I'm not going to go into the specific details of what made it unacceptable, but it was totally unacceptable. I think there's an opportunity for them, but the opportunity is closing fast. What happened with the Houthis yesterday, what happened with our strike ought to inform as to where we stand with regard to terrorism and our tolerance level for terrorist actions. And I would encourage Hamas to get much more sensible than how they have been.
This happened on March the 16th, so roughly 2 days before the war restarted. At this point, Hamas still had an option to agree to some kind of deal to delay the Israeli response, but there was no deal signed. Then last night, Israel restarted the war by striking inside Gaza. It's important to note here that Hamas still has 59 hostages in their captivity. 24 of them are believed to be alive. So Israel is restarting this war to get those hostages back. Last night, Israel launched dozens of airstrikes inside Gaza targeting Hamas bases, Hamas officials, and is expected to only continue until the hostages are back to safety. Now, as you guys know, there are many clips from this war that I cannot show on YouTube because YouTube considers them not advertiser friendly, and that's why YouTube often restricts or demonetizes our video. But this video, we want to show you all the clips, so we have decided to turn off monetization. That way, hopefully, this video does not get restricted. The reason we can afford to turn off monetization on some videos is thanks to our supporters on Patreon. Over there, we post daily war clips that we cannot post on YouTube because of restrictions. reactions, and on top of that, often we have experts and experienced veterans come on and break down battlefield clips and battlefield battles. This is something that's extremely educational for me personally, and hopefully to all the Patreons who are supporting us on there. So if this is something you're interested in, you can sign up for our Patreon by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on your screen. It costs as little as $5, and your support helps us out greatly, so thank you so much. Now let's get to more clips. Now coming back to the video, we have a statement from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In the statement, he shares an important point, saying that Steve Witkoff, the special envoy to Middle East, had a ceasefire offer that he presented to both parties, so Israel and Hamas. Netanyahu here claims that Israel had accepted that offer, but Hamas flatly refused it, and that's why this war is restarting. The blame for the war is on Hamas. Here's the statement.
Hamas is responsible for this war. It invaded our towns, murdered our people, raped our women, and kidnapped our loved ones. Hamas refused offer after offer to release our hostages. In the past 2 weeks, Israel did not initiate any military action in the hope that Hamas would change course. Well, that didn't happen. While Israel accepted the offer of President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, Hamas flatly refused to do so. And this is why I authorized yesterday the renewal of military action against Hamas. Israel does not target Palestinian civilians. We target Hamas terrorists. And when these terrorists embed themselves in civilian areas, when they use civilians as human shields, they're the ones who are responsible for all unintended casualties. Palestinian civilians should avoid any contact with Hamas terrorists. And I call on the people of Gaza, get out of harm's way, move to safer areas. Because every civilian casualty is a tragedy. And every civilian casualty is the fault of Hamas. I thank President Trump for his unwavering support for Israel. Our alliance with the United States has never been stronger. To those who criticize Israel, I ask, what would you do if terrorists murdered and kidnapped your children? You would do what we are doing. In the face of pure evil, free societies have no choice but to fight. So I want to assure all our friends around the world, Israel will fight and Israel will win. We will bring our people home and we will destroy Hamas. We will not relent until we achieve all these vital goals. And we will not rest until we give our country a future of peace, prosperity, and hope.
Now, we'll keep you guys updated on this, how this war progresses, so be sure to hit the subscribe button down below, and hopefully there's another ceasefire coming in few days. No more escalation. But it doesn't seem like that this is going to be the only problem in the Middle East. If we just look a little bit to the south, we have Houthis now officially declaring war on the United States. As we covered in our last video about Middle East, Houthis have been attacking commercial American ships for a couple of years now, ever since October 2023. Just weeks after Hamas carried out their October 7th attacks, Houthis started attacking every ship that was passing through the Red Sea. Over time, these attacks have caused major economic damage to the global economy. In 2024 alone, Houthis have inflicted an estimated $200 billion in damages globally. On top of this, because of their attacks, the shipping costs have increased fivefold as vessels are being forced to detour around the Horn of Africa, so they can avoid the Red Sea and the Suez Canal altogether. These reroutes are adding roughly $1 million per trip that customers in the United States and countries around the world are paying. Additionally, because of these attacks, the insurance rates for the transit through the Suez Canal has gone up 20 times. And it's not just the commercial vessels that Houthis are attacking. They are also attacking US military ships in the Suez Canal and in the Red Sea. That's just not acceptable. If there's one thing you can take away from American history is you don't touch our boats. I'm guessing Houthi fighters did not have to attend US history in high school because they're about to learn that lesson the hard way. President Trump has ordered the US Navy to go all out and take care of the Houthi problem once and for all.
Economically, we are pounding them militarily. By the way, to the Houthis, this isn't a one-night thing. this will continue until you say, we're done shooting at ships, we're done shooting at assets. We don't want a long, limited war in the Middle East. We don't care what happens in the Yemeni civil war. This is about stopping the shooting at assets in that critical waterway to reopen freedom of navigation, which is a core national interest of the United States. And Iran has been enabling the Houthis for far too long. They better back off.
That Iran part at the end of the statement is the important bit here, because it is Iran and the IRGC from Iran that's been supplying all these groups. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, Houthis in Yemen, and many different groups all around the Middle East are being supplied by Iran in so-called the axis of resistance. This is Iran's way of hurting America, American interest in the Middle East, and attacking American bases, American allies, while also maintaining a plausible deniability. Iran gives these groups weapons, Iran gives them instructions, they give them money, they give them intelligence, then they tell them where to attack, who to attack. And after the attack happens, Iran basically goes, hey, we did not know this group was going to do this. We are completely independent of that group, so please don't attack us back. Over the last few decades, Iran has figured out that this is the best way to attack stronger powers while also not risking any escalation on Iranian soil. But unfortunately for Iran, this is not going to work any longer. President Trump and his administration have come out publicly and said that any attack from Houthis will be counted as an attack from Iran directly, because at the end of the day, Iran is controlling all these groups. They are basically Iran's puppets. But before we get to that statement, I do want to go over this so-called retaliation that Houthis just carried out yesterday. You see, in the Red Sea, Houthis recently announced that they targeted the USS Harry S. Truman, a US aircraft carrier, but everyone on the carrier didn't even know that there was an attack. Here we have their Defense Department sharing the details on the so-called retaliation that Houthis carried out.
The initial wave of strikes hit over 30 targets at multiple locations, degrading a variety of Houthi capabilities. These included terrorist training sites, unmanned aerial vehicle infrastructure, weapons manufacturing capabilities, and weapons storage facilities. It also included a number of command and control centers, including a terrorist compound where we know several senior Houthi unmanned aerial vehicle experts were located. On Sunday, strike operations continued against additional headquarters locations, weapons storage facilities, as well as detection capabilities that have been used to threaten maritime shipping in the past. Today, the operation continues, and it will continue in the coming days until we achieve the president's objectives. It's a much broader set of targets that we've been able to action in this case, and the other key differences are the delegation of authorities from the president through Secretary Hegseth down to the operational commander. So that allows us to achieve a tempo of operations where we can react to opportunities that we see on the battlefield in order to continue to put pressure on the Houthis. We have some initial estimates. I hesitate to say what they are because they're very much estimates at this point, but I think in terms of dozens might be a safe overall characterization. On the civilian casualty side, no indications of any civilian casualties. We, of course, have seen some of the accusations by the Houthis. We look at those closely when they do come in, but we have no credible indications of any civilian casualties. Houthis claim to have tried to attack the Harry S. Truman. Quite frankly, it's hard to tell because while we're executing precision strikes, they missed by over 100 miles. I would just tell you their effectiveness, I would question anything that they claim in the press that they're doing or not doing. The Bashad is not currently being used for those operations, but we do know that other vessels are contemplated for those sorts of operations. We're watching very closely to see if they return to the AO.
You see, this is where we have to keep in mind how Houthis characterize a successful attack. For them, it's not really about attacking any target or dealing any damage, especially to an aircraft carrier in the Red Sea. For them, all they care about is launching the drones, then they can claim that they have successfully retaliated. They make a propaganda video of the drone in the air and they post on their Twitter page saying, hey, US should back off because we are retaliating. Unfortunately, there are still some Twitter accounts, some American Twitter accounts that fall for stuff like that and just amplify those propaganda messages. Anyways, let's talk about how they're getting all these drones, all these AK-47s, all the weapons they have. It's not just Iran that's supporting these groups in the Middle East. It's also Russia. Because as soon as US started striking Houthi strongholds in Yemen, guess who called up Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, and said, hey, you need to stop these attacks? Russia. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov called up Marco Rubio and told him US military action needs to stop right away. US needs to halt everything in the Middle East. Now, Russia is a lot more embedded with the Houthis and Hezbollah than many people realize. You guys remember the Merchant of Death guy? Victor Bout, we traded him for a US basketball player, Brittany Griner, when she was arrested in Russia for, I think, carrying weed. Well, he's now active in Yemen. He's helping the Houthis get new weapons. And as if that wasn't bad enough, he's an active politician in Russia. He has a seat in local assembly in Russia, and he's selling Russian weapons to a foreign adversary, a foreign terrorist group. Here's the Wall Street reporting on this. Since his release, Victor Bout has joined a pro-Kremlin far-right party and won a seat in local assembly in 2023, seemingly turning the page on his days as an arms broker. But when Houthis emissaries went to Moscow in August to negotiate the purchase of $10 million worth of automatic weapons, they encountered a familiar face: Victor Bout. This is all the proof any American should need that Russia is not an ally. We have an active Russian politician selling weapons to a group that has declared war on Russia, a group that has on their flag "Death to America" as a slogan, and a group that's attacking American soldiers, American bases, American allies, and American ships. All the while, Putin is helping Iran get a nuclear weapon. That's why next up we have a statement from President Trump himself, warning Iran against achieving any nuclear capabilities and also warning them against helping Houthis. Let nobody be fooled. The hundreds of attacks being made by Houthi, the sinister mobsters and thugs based in Yemen, who are hated by the Yemeni people, all emanate from and are created by Iran. Any further attack or retaliation by the Houthis will be met with great force, and there is no guarantee that force will stop there. Iran has played the innocent victim of rogue terrorists from which they have lost control, but they haven't lost control at all. They are dictating every move, giving them weapons, supplying them with money, and highly sophisticated military equipment, and even so-called intelligence. Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon, and from this point forward, as a shot being fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran. And Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be dire. Much like the Houthis, Iran's foreign policy is pretty simple: death to America, death to Israel. They don't focus on helping their citizens, helping their population. They spend all the money they make to their nuclear program and their weapons industry. So personally, I'm glad to see this new Iran policy. This is what we've been waiting for a long time, as we have seen that all these small groups all over the Middle East are funded by Iran. So we should be putting more pressure on Iran so we can stop all these other groups from causing chaos in the Middle East. If we cut off the money, if we cut off the weapons, Middle East will be a peaceful place, a safer place.
Lastly, as you guys know, over the last 2 weeks, few of our videos have been demonetized by YouTube for talking about sensitive topics and covering violent events. This is why recently we opened up memberships on the channel. This way you guys can directly support our content. Again, you don't have to do it. We'll continue making the videos, but if you enjoy the content and you're able to support us, you can do so by signing up for our membership. It costs less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, and it's greatly appreciated.
The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site, and
There's never a dull day when Trump is in office. The trade war with Canada and Mexico just slowed down, and the very next day we have statements about Iran and Gaza that nobody would have expected. A kind of a statement that leaves more questions than answers. So let's get into it. About Iran, Trump basically said that they tried assassinating him, and if they try again, there will be hell to pay. Trump warned Iran that the country will be wiped off the face of the earth if they try that again. Moving on to Gaza. It's a lot, and we'll get to all that in this video, but basically Trump said that US is happy to take over Gaza and relocate the Palestinians there to some other place. What I'm thinking is Trump saw the sign that said Free Palestine, and he was like, I'll take it. Like always, be sure to hit the like button down below. YouTube has a bad habit of sometimes suppressing our videos, so your likes help us out tremendously in the algorithm. And let's start. First thing I want to talk about is Iran. Trump restarted his maximum pressure campaign on Iran, and the reason he gave was the fact that Iran is too close to acquiring a nuclear weapon. Now, I'm sure this is something most of you guys know, but the US and Israel have said it very publicly and very clearly that Iran cannot acquire a nuclear weapon. Israel has actually gone as far as to say that they'll send in the jets and take out the nuclear sites if they think Iran is too close to getting a nuclear weapon. And big reason behind all this is because they support terrorist groups all around the Middle East. That includes Hezbollah, that includes Hamas, and that includes Houthis in Yemen. Now, Trump did something very similar, actually the exact same thing, back in 2017 during his first administration, where he implemented a maximum pressure campaign on Iran to bring it to a negotiating table to work out a new nuclear deal. Now, before this, we did have a nuclear deal with Iran that President Obama negotiated, but Trump believed that Iran wasn't keeping up its end of the deal and they were still working towards acquiring a nuclear weapon. So he pulled us out of that deal and implemented this maximum pressure campaign. Now, I want to show you guys some charts from last time to show you how actually this maximum pressure campaign, basically a bunch of sanctions on the Iranian economy, had an effect. So here first we have the inflation chart. As you can see on your screen, inflation just shot up a few months after the sanctions went into effect. Then we have the GDP chart. The Iranian GDP growth just disappeared overnight. That's how strong and excessive the sanctions were. At that point, this was something that was unprecedented because at that point, Iran was the most sanctioned country in the world. This was before Russia launched its senseless invasion on Ukraine and took that spot from Iran. But at that point, all these sanctions were having some dramatic effect on the Iranian economy. And lastly, just to show you guys the exchange rate, because this will bring us into Iran had roughly $150 billion in foreign reserves before this maximum pressure campaign started. And by the end of the Trump administration, they had just $4 billion left. Now, bad part of sanctions like this is, of course, it affects the normal people first, and the hope is that the leaders will not let this slide for too long and come to the negotiating table. But as we saw with Iran in 2017 to 2020, and as we are seeing with Putin right now, leaders, more specifically dictators, don't really care about their citizens. So the sad part is the citizens end up suffering for something that their leaders are doing. And that's exactly why President Trump here is saying he doesn't really want to do it, and he hopes the other side comes to the negotiating table and they can work out a fair deal. But he still went ahead and signed the executive order because it gives him power to implement the sanction whenever he needs. Here's the clip explaining why he's doing the sanctions, and then he talks about how Iran tried assassinating him during his campaign. This actually, the news broke the same day when, I'm sure you guys have seen the clip where 2 bullets barely missed President Trump's head. They grazed his ear. On the same day, we had declassified news from, I can't remember which agency, but basically the report was that Iran was trying to assassinate President Trump and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and former National Security Advisor John Bolton. Of course, it is a big news, but on that day, this news was overshadowed by former president almost getting assassinated. So a lot of people don't know, and that's exactly what Trump talks about here.
How close do you think Iran is to developing a nuclear weapon?
I think they're close. I think they're close. They're too close. But again, you could go back 4 years. I would have said they would have had it during this intervening period. But they're pretty close, Peter.
And why say that you're unhappy to sign it if it's Iran and their proxies who have threatened to retaliate against you and your team by killing you guys for taking out Soleimani?
Well, they haven't done that, and that would be a terrible thing for them to do. Not because of me. If they did that, they would be obliterated. That'd be the end. I've left instructions. If they do it, they get obliterated. There won't be anything left. And they shouldn't be able to do it. And Biden should have said that, but he never did. I don't know why. Lack of intelligence, perhaps. But he never said it. If that happens to a leader, or close to a leader, frankly, if you had other people involved also, you would call for total obliteration of a state that did it. That would include Iran. So I'm signing this, and it's a very powerful document, but hopefully we're not going to have to use it.
Now, a quick note I do want to make on something he said is that President Biden did warn Iran, and he warned Iran very clearly. He basically said that any attempt on Trump's life again would basically mean a full-on war with Iran. And I liked it. I think that's how it should be. I think the message should be loud and clear that any government official is off limits, no matter which party is in power and no matter which party that official is from. But anyways, moving forward, let's talk about Gaza. And I'm sure you guys can see how long this video is. And that means we have a lot to talk about. Now, before I get into statements he made today, I quickly want to show you guys a comment he had yesterday. And it's very enlightening and kind of funny. Like Joe Rogan said, sometimes Trump is funny unknowingly.
Yes, you've mentioned in the past you're concerned about Israel being too small geographically. Would you support annexation of parts of the West Bank by Israel?
Well, I'm not going to talk about that. It certainly is a small, it's a small country in terms of land. See this pen, this wonderful pen? My desk is the Middle East. And this pen, the top of the pen, that's Israel. That's not good, right? You know, that's a pretty big difference. I use that as an analogy. It's pretty accurate, actually. It's a pretty small piece of land. And it's amazing that they've been able to do what they've been able to do when you think about it. There's a lot of good, smart brain power, but it is a very small piece of land, no question about it.
Now, what you heard is nothing compared to what's coming. But before we get to that, we had Steve Witkoff. That's the special envoy to Middle East. He's the one who was instrumental in orchestrating this ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. And he was clarifying some of the statement that President made the day before. Now, I would want to point out that this clip you're about to see was in the morning yesterday. So this was before Trump made all the statements during his presser and before all the statements Trump made with Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. So let's listen to the Witkoff statement. And he was clarifying in a lot more clear sense on what the White House plan is for Gaza.
In any city in the United States of America, if you had damage that was 1/100th of what I saw in Gaza, and I went there at the direction of the president and the national security advisor, so we would know right very specifically what was going on, nobody would be allowed to go back to their homes. That's how dangerous it is. There's 30,000 unexploded munitions. It is the buildings that could tip over at any moment. There's no utilities there whatsoever. No working water, electric, gas, nothing. God knows what kind of disease might be festering there. So when the president talks about cleaning it out, he talks about making it habitable. And this is a long-range plan. They've dug tunnels underneath there that have basically degraded the stone that you make that would form foundations. We have to examine that. You do it with borings. You do it with subterranean surveys.
How long could that take?
And this guy knows real estate.
It's years on top of years. The disposal effort in Gaza is, we estimate, 3 to 5 years just to dispose of all the things before you can look down beneath the surface of the soil, and then before you get a master plan done. And the president is intent on getting it all done correctly. So to me, it is unfair to have explained to Palestinians that they might be back in 5 years. That's just preposterous.
Now, after this, when the Trump presser started, that's when things started to get crazy. Some of the comments he just kept on doubling down, and these were the comments we had no hint of before today, that US has any kind of policy like this, any kind of plans like this. Basically, he explains how he wants the people in Gaza to go to a different country, maybe Egypt or Jordan, and he wants to rebuild the whole Gaza, basically remove all the bombs that are still laying there untouched and that didn't go off, and rebuild all the buildings and improve the living qualities. And on top of that, he clarified US would not pay for this because it's not just US who wants peace in the Middle East. It's Iran, Saudi, Jordan, Egypt. Everyone wants peace, and he believes everyone should be able to pitch in. But here's the statement about Gaza. Again, this is before he even met Netanyahu. So the statements will just get crazier as the meeting goes on, but here's the statement before the meeting, just in the presser alone.
Yeah, I would like to see Jordan. I'd like to see Egypt take some look. The Gaza thing has not worked. It's never worked. And I feel very differently about Gaza than a lot of people. I think they should get a good, fresh, beautiful piece of land, and we get some people to put up the money to build it and make it nice and make it habitable and enjoyable and make it a
They
home.
don't want to leave, though. Palestinians say they don't want to leave.
I don't know how they could want to stay. It's a demolition site. It's a pure demolition site. If we could find the right piece of land or numerous pieces of land and build them some really nice places with plenty of money in the area, that's for sure, I think that would be a lot better than going back to Gaza, which has had just decades and decades of death.
Where would those pieces of land be?
Well, they
Those
could be
Arab
in
countries
Jordan,
don't
and they
want
could
to
be in Egypt, and they could be in other places. You could have more than two, more than one, but you could have more than two, and you'd have people living in a place that could be very beautiful and safe and nice. Gaza's been a disaster for decades.
Now we'll get to all the other statements Trump made that day, but before that, I wanted to give you guys my thinking on his proposal that he just put out. I don't think Jordan's ever gonna agree to having Palestinian, and more specifically Hamas, into their country. Now, I'm sure many of you guys know that Jordan is still ruled by a monarchy. They have a king. And last time Palestinian, more specifically people from PLO, were in the country was, I think, in the 70s. They tried overthrowing the king. So chances of him letting Hamas into their country is a definite no. But I really think what Trump is trying to do is a very similar tactic to what he just did with Canada and Mexico. Now, there are a lot of people in Gaza, in Palestine, and even people here in the US and in the West who don't want Israel to exist. They just want Palestine from the river to the sea, as the famous slogan goes. And I think those people are gonna have a change of heart very quickly now that the Trump is saying he wants to just move everyone out of Gaza. Because this makes the two-state solution seem like heaven compared to what Trump is saying right now. And I think that's what he's aiming for. He's just doing some kind of negotiation. I guess someday I should definitely read his book, The Art of the Deal. I'll have a better sense of how he negotiates. But that's my thinking. I think that's what Trump is trying and Trump administration is trying. But only time will tell. But let me know what you guys think. What do you think Trump's trying to do here? Does he actually want to move all the Gaza citizen Palestinians out of Gaza? Or is this just some kind of negotiation tool? Let me know in the comments. Now let's move on to his other statements. Now this one is him sitting next to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and Netanyahu was asked an interesting question that I'm sure you guys were wondering too. When the Israel-Hamas peace deal, the ceasefire was signed, not the peace deal, both presidents took credit. President Biden was in office. This was after the election and Trump was the president-elect. And many people said it was because of Trump they signed, and many people said Biden was the one who pushed through the ceasefire. Netanyahu was asked this question and basically asked, who does he give credit to? And this was his answer.
President Trump, I want to Prime Minister Netanyahu. We've heard Joe Biden and Donald Trump take credit for the hostage and ceasefire deal. Who do you think deserves more credit?
I think President Trump added great force and powerful leadership to this effort. I appreciate it. He sent a very good emissary. He's helped it along. And, I'll just tell you, I'm happy that they're here. And I'm sure the president is happy that they're here. And I would think that's about enough.
Now, coming back to our relocation of Palestinian in Gaza, Trump was asked that Saudi and Jordan, or Egypt and Jordan, both are saying no. What are your thoughts on that? And this is how he answered that. By the way, I do want to point out that so far Trump hasn't mentioned US taking over the Gaza Strip. That is coming though. That's coming later in the day when he's doing the press conference with Netanyahu. But here's his answer to the Egypt and Jordan question.
In Egypt, what other countries you think might accept Palestinians from Gaza?
Well, I think Jordan and Egypt will, I know they've spoken about it with you, and they say they're not going to accept. I say they will. But I think other countries will accept also. I think that Gaza maybe is a demolition site right now. If you look at Gaza, it's all, there's hardly a building standing, and the ones that are going to collapse. You can't live in Gaza right now, and I think we need another location. I think it should be a location that's going to make people happy. You look over the decades, it's all death in Gaza. This has been happening for years. It's all death. If we can get a beautiful area to resettle people permanently in nice homes and where they can be happy and not be shot, not be killed, not be knifed to death like what's happening in Gaza. And right now you have in Gaza a very dangerous situation in terms of explosives all over the place, in terms of tunnels that nobody knows who's in the tunnel. The whole thing is a mess. And I think that if we can resettle, and I believe we can do it in areas where the leaders currently say no. I mean, I've been saying that with Mexico, having to do with the border and all of the things, and you saw what happened, 10,000 soldiers, and they're going to do a good job. I really believe that, and I believe Canada is going to do a good job also. And they said the same thing, and then they did something much different than what you were hearing. This is very unlucky for them. They've lived like hell. They lived like you're living in hell. Gaza is not a place for people to be living. And the only reason they want to go back, and I believe this strongly, is because they have no alternative. What's the alternative? Go where? There's no other alternative. If they had an alternative, they'd much rather not go back to Gaza and live in a beautiful alternative that's safe.
What makes this whole situation a little bit more ironic or funny is the fact that next week we have King of Jordan coming to the White House. And let's see what he has to say in front of Trump about this plan. Like I said, last time PLO was in his country, they tried overthrowing the monarchy. Now let's move on to the big statement where Trump says the US will own Gaza, they will be the one taking care of it. And more importantly, he did say that we'll resettle Gaza to other places. It could be one other place or it could be multiple other places in multiple different countries, but people cannot go back to Gaza because he's saying that will only restart the war. Listen to that statement.
I also strongly believe that the Gaza Strip, which has been a symbol of death and destruction for so many decades and so bad for the people anywhere near it, and especially those who live there, and frankly, who's been really very unlucky. It's been very unlucky. It's been an unlucky place for a long time. Being in its presence just has not been good, and it should not go through a process of rebuilding and occupation by the same people that have really stood there and fought for it and lived there and died there and lived a miserable existence there. Instead, we should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts, and there are many of them that want to do this, and build various domains that will ultimately be occupied by the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Gaza, ending the death and destruction and, frankly, bad luck. This can be paid for by neighboring countries of great wealth. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 12. It could be numerous sites, or it could be one large site. But the people will be able to live in comfort and peace, and we'll make sure something really spectacular is done. They're going to have peace. They're not going to be shot at and killed and destroyed like this civilization of wonderful people has had to endure. The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. I'm hopeful that this ceasefire could be the beginning of a larger and more enduring peace that will end the bloodshed and killing once and for all. With the same goal in mind, my administration has been moving quickly to restore trust in the alliance and rebuild American strength throughout the region. And we've really done that. We're a respected nation again. A lot's happened in the last couple of weeks. We are actually a very respected nation again.
Later in the presser, Trump goes on to emphasize again that this is not going to be a temporary occupation by the US. This is going to be a permanent situation where US takes over the Gaza Strip, builds buildings, builds hotels, I'm guessing, bunch of other stuff. And Netanyahu reaffirms it that this is a very unique solution to the peace that Israel always wanted to bring to the region. Now, another interesting thread on all that was the fact that Trump said said that Saudi Arabia does not require a Palestinian state for the country to normalize its ties with Israel. That means Saudi Arabia is not really fighting for a Palestinian state. And here's the clip for that. Then we'll talk about the Saudi Arabian response, because they came out saying that they never had this talk.
So the Saudis demanding a Palestinian state?
No, they're not. Nope.
Are they demanding a path towards a Palestinian state or any other recognition?
Everybody's demanding one thing. You know what it is? Peace. We want peace. We want people to stop being killed. But everybody's demanding one thing. Very simple, peace. And he wants peace also.
Now, clearly, Saudi Arabia does not agree with this, because this was their statement very soon after the Trump presser ended. The position of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia regarding the Palestinian state is firm and unwavering position. This has been reiterated by His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Al Saud, Chairman of the Council of Ministers. May God protect him. This position is explicitly and clearly stated, leaving no room for misinterpretation under any circumstances, as expressed during his speech at the 9th annual session of the Shura Council. In this speech, he emphasized that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would not proceed with any steps towards normalization with Israel without finding a solution to the issue of a Palestinian state. You can read the whole statement if you want to pause the video, but the message of the statement is that Saudi Arabia does not normalize relationships with Israel without a solution to a Palestinian state. Now, earlier they have said that they don't need a Palestinian state in existence and recognized by Israel for the relationships to normalize, but they do need a path towards it. So they do need some kind of solution, some kind of strategy, or some kind of path that will give Palestine a state in the future, and that would basically mean Saudi Arabia is open to normalizing relationships. And that would be a huge deal, because Saudi Arabia is considered by many the leader of the Arab world. Now, talking about the two-state solution, this is where things get a bit confusing, or maybe not that confusing depending on how you look at things, because Trump was asked this question if he supports the two-state solution or not, and he made it clear that his vision about Gaza does not take away from whatever he has said about the two-state solution. He just wants people out of Gaza because it's not a safe place to live, and that has nothing to do with the Palestinian state existing or not. Listen to that.
You think all the Palestinians should be relocated to other countries. Does that mean that you do not support a two-state solution?
It doesn't mean anything about a two-state or one state or any other state. It means that we want to give people a chance at life. They have never had a chance at life because the Gaza Strip has been a hellhole for people living there. It's been horrible. Hamas has made it so bad, so dangerous, so unfair to people. And by doing what I'm recommending that we do, it's a very strong recommendation, but it is a strong recommendation. By doing that, we think we're going to bring perhaps great peace to long beyond this area. And I have to stress, this is not for Israel. This is for everybody in the Middle East, Arabs, Muslims. This is for everybody. This would be where they can partake in terms of jobs and living and all of the other benefits. And I think it's very important. It just doesn't work the other way. You know, you can't keep trying. They just has been going along for so many decades, you can't even count. You just can't keep doing. You have to learn from history. You can't keep doing the same mistake over and over again. Gaza is a hellhole right now. It was before the bombing started, frankly. And we're going to give people a chance to live in a beautiful community that's safe and secure. And I think you're going to see a tremendous outflowing of support. I can tell you, I spoke to other leaders of countries in the Middle East, and they love the idea. They say it would really bring stability, and what we need is stability.
Lastly, as you guys know, over the last 2 weeks, few of our videos have been demonetized by YouTube for talking about sensitive topics and covering violent events. This is why recently we opened up memberships on the channel. This way you guys can directly support our content. Again, you don't have to do it. We'll continue making the videos, but if you enjoy the content and you're able to support us, you can do so by signing up for our membership. It costs less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, and it's greatly appreciated.